I was always the second choice. At best. Most of the time, I wasn't chosen at all. They called me quiet, serious, bookish. They said my sister Lily lit up a room, while I faded into the wallpaper. And maybe they were right. She had golden hair that caught the sun and laughter that drew every man in a 10-mile radius. I had quiet eyes and a soft voice, and a heart that learned early not to hope. When we came of age, the suitors lined up at our door. But they weren't for me. Not ever. I watched as one after another courted Lily, some with poetry, others with promises. I was the one they asked to pass notes, to whisper compliments when Lily was too aloof to listen. Even the one I dared to love, a boy with dark curls and clever hands, looked right past me. He told me I was sweet, like a sister, and asked if I thought Lily liked musicians. The final blow came at the spring ball. My dress was simple but carefully stitched. I'd even let Lily curl my hair. I hoped, stupidly, that someone might see me that night. Instead, I watched as Lily danced every dance, while I sat in the corner sipping lukewarm punch. The only attention I received was from a dowager who mistook me for a servant. I left the next week. My aunt, a stern but generous widow with a house in the capital, offered me an escape. I studied, I worked, I invested. I learned to hold my own in rooms filled with men who spoke too loudly and women who smiled with their teeth. I learned to speak softly and still be heard. To walk into a room and command it without saying a word. I built a fortune under a name no one recognized, and made allies in places my old village couldn't even pronounce. Then, one evening at a gallery, I met him. Adrian Vale. The man every socialite whispered about. Mysterious, sharp as glass, and completely uninterested in society's games. We struck a bargain over champagne. He needed to shake off an ambitious heiress. I needed a fiancé. Not forever. Just long enough. And so, I returned. The carriage ride felt endless. The closer we drew to the estate, the more I felt her name echoing in my mind. Lily. I wondered if she'd changed. If her hair still gleamed like honey in the sun. If her voice still had that lilting charm that made people lean in. Adrian stepped out first. Tall. Impeccably dressed. Effortlessly cold. I followed in a gown of deep green silk that clung like a secret. My hair pinned in a style my mother would have called too daring. And diamonds, real ones, glinting at my ears. The footman announced us. A hush fell over the drawing room. My parents stared. Lily blinked. Then blinked again. Claire, my mother whispered. I smiled. It's been a while. Lily rushed forward, arms outstretched. I didn't even recognize you. I let her hug me, her perfume sweet and cloying. She pulled back, eyes scanning me with the sharp calculation of someone used to being the prettiest in the room. And this must be, she asked. Adrian Vale, he said smoothly, taking my hand. My fiancé. Lily's smile twitched. Mother insisted on tea. Father asked about Adrian's family. I deflected politely. Adrian played his part flawlessly, wrapping his arm around my waist, murmuring endearments with a touch of irony only I could hear. Lily watched it all, her smile stretched tight. Later, as we stood in the garden, she joined me. You really have changed, she said, eyes flicking over the dress. I mean, look at you. I looked straight back. So have you. She laughed. I suppose I've grown up. I'm practically engaged myself. Do you remember Thomas Brearley? From the estate over? I remembered. He used to come over for dinners. Once, he told me I had interesting eyes. Then he asked if Lily was seeing anyone. I'm sure you'll be very happy, I said, and meant none of it. She leaned closer. But Adrian Vale? The Adrian Vale? How did you manage that? We just fit, I said. The lie tasted sweet. Over the next few days, the town buzzed with the news. Claire Whitmore, the plain younger sister, back with a vengeance, and an engagement ring the size of a small inheritance. Invitations poured in. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know me. The same girls who once ignored me gushed over my shoes. The same boys who mocked my silence now complimented my wit. I played the part. Gracious. Dazzling. Just out of reach. And I watched as Lily began to unravel. She tried everything. Reigniting old jokes. Playing the helpless hostess. Even dressing in colors she once told me clashed with her complexion. But the eyes had shifted. People whispered about her sister now. About me. Adrian and I kept up the act with ease. At night, we'd laugh about it. He found the whole performance amusing. But I knew he was intrigued. Not by Lily. By me. She hates that you've become the story, he said once, as we danced at a party. I can see it in the way she watches you. She was always the story, I replied. I was just the footnote. And now? Now I'm the ending. He smiled at that. But revenge wasn't just about attention. It wasn't about dresses or diamonds. It was about making them remember every moment they forgot me. Every cruel smirk. Every time they assumed I didn't matter. And it was only just beginning. The charity ball was the first event I planned entirely myself. The old Claire would have watched from the sidelines. The new me? I stood at the center of it all, wrapped in a midnight blue gown with a neckline Lily would have once deemed too daring for someone like you. Every detail of the night was tailored for effect, from the jazz quartet to the imported roses to the strategic guest list. It wasn't about generosity. It was about control. Lily arrived fashionably late, as expected, in a dress just a shade too similar to mine. Her arm was tucked into Thomas Brearley's, who looked a little older than I remembered and a lot more bored. She kissed my cheek with practiced sweetness. This is just breathtaking, Claire. I had no idea you had such taste. I'm glad you approve, I said. I modeled the lighting after that gallery Adrian and I visited in Vienna. Adrian appeared on cue, greeting Lily with a distant nod before sliding his hand to the small of my back. That gesture alone made her stiffen. The mayor made a toast. The orchestra swelled. I led the first dance. It wasn't about love, it was about optics. Every camera in the room caught it, the elusive Adrian Vale smiling, his hand in mine, while Lily stood to the side, watching. Later, I caught her in the powder room, staring at herself in the mirror. She turned when I entered. I'll admit it, she said. You've become quite the spectacle. I've become seen, I corrected. Her eyes narrowed. Is that all this is? You came back to prove a point? Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just stopped trying to be liked. The door swung open before she could respond. A woman from the next estate walked in and launched into a string of compliments, about my gown, my event, my ring. I smiled and thanked her while Lily stood behind me, silent. By the end of the night, it was clear to everyone, the power had shifted. But it wasn't just about Lily anymore. My parents were the next piece on the board. Father had always been preoccupied, barely noticing me unless I was in trouble. Mother lived through Lily's accomplishments. I invited them for a private dinner at the manor Adrian and I had rented for the season. The staff greeted them by name. The dining room sparkled. They tried to hide their awe. I still can't believe it, Mother said, sipping wine she couldn't pronounce. You, engaged to Adrian Vale. It's been a whirlwind, I said. But we're happy. Adrian, ever the actor, kissed my knuckles. I find Claire's mind addictive. Mother blinked. Her mind? I smiled tightly. Yes. Turns out, men do value that. Father cleared his throat. And what are your plans after marriage? I'll continue managing my portfolio, I said. Adrian and I may expand into real estate. You're working? He asked, genuinely confused. I've been working for years. They didn't respond. They didn't know how to. In their world, Lily was the daughter worth praising. I had simply disappeared. Now I was back with a fortune, a fiancé, and a quiet fire they couldn't name. After they left, Adrian looked at me over the rim of his glass. You enjoyed that. Immensely. And your endgame? Is it just watching them squirm? I want Lily to know what it feels like to be overlooked. To be second. She already knows, he said. That's why she's trying. She's working with the Chancellor's Committee on Trade, apparently. I always knew she had it in her, one woman said, too loudly. Lily's fingers clenched around her teacup. I caught her watching me again. Not with admiration. With panic. She pulled me aside after the guests left, her voice sharp. What are you doing? Attending a party. You know what I mean. This whole transformation. The ring. Adrian. Is it real? Why do you care? I asked. She flinched. Because it feels like you're mocking me. Funny, I said. That's how I felt for years. That's not fair, she snapped. Neither was being invisible in my own home. For a moment, she looked young again. Vulnerable. Like the sister I used to braid flowers with. But that version of us was long gone. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. I know, I replied. That's what made it worse. She left without saying goodbye. Adrian watched from the balcony. She's unraveling. She's remembering, I said. And regret is a powerful thing. He leaned against the doorframe. You're dangerous when you're quiet. I've always been dangerous. You're just the first one to notice. He tilted his head, eyes studying me with new weight. Maybe not the first. But certainly the most entertained. I laughed, genuinely. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. But I wasn't done. The ruse was working. The town was in awe. My family was confused. Lily was cracking. And Adrian. Adrian was beginning to forget that this was pretend. So was I. And that was dangerous. Because real feelings had no place in a game built on revenge. The night of the engagement gala came faster than expected. It was the event meant to seal the illusion, a grand declaration to high society that I had won. I chose the venue carefully, a historic estate with sweeping staircases and mirrored halls. The same place Lily once declared would be her dream wedding venue. Back then, I was the shadow in the corner, helping her adjust her veil during debutante rehearsals. Now, the invitations bore my name in gilded print. Adrian arrived late, on purpose. The anticipation rippled through the crowd like wind across glass. When he walked in, black suit, silver cufflinks, eyes like a promise, people turned. But it wasn't until he took my hand and kissed my temple that the room shifted. Whispers followed us. We were untouchable. Except from Lily. She arrived with Thomas, looking flawless in icy blue satin. But her smile was tight. Her eyes flicked from the guests to me to Adrian, scanning for cracks. She wouldn't find them. I'd rehearsed every word, every laugh, every glance. During the toast, Adrian raised his glass and said, "To the woman who sees the game, and chooses to win it anyway." The crowd applauded. Lily didn't. Afterward, she found me near the terrace. Her voice was low. "You're not in love with him." I tilted my head. "And you would know that because..." "I know you," she hissed. "And I know him. He doesn't do love. You'd be surprised what people do when the stakes are high." She crossed her arms. "This is a performance. Admit it." I looked her square in the eye. "Of course it is. But the audience isn't you." Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked away. Later that evening, while the string quartet played something soft and expensive, Adrian and I shared a dance. He held me like he'd forgotten we were pretending. "You enjoy this more than you should," I said, keeping my smile aimed at the watching crowd. "And you don't?" "I enjoy the control." He leaned closer. "So do I." The moment crackled, sharp and warm. Dangerous. In the days that followed, the balance began to tilt. Adrian was supposed to be my pawn. But sometimes, I caught him watching me too long. Asking questions he didn't need to ask. Remembering things I hadn't meant to share. I tried not to like it. Because this wasn't about romance. It was about Lily. About years of being ignored, dismissed, pitted. I had built this entire charade to prove I was never the lesser one. But Lily wasn't the only person unraveling. Mother confronted me one morning over tea. She didn't ask how I'd been. She didn't apologize for the years of indifference. She just said, "You've changed." I had to, I said. She stirred her cup once, twice. "I worry you've become hard." I had to, I repeated. "You're not angry at Lily. You're angry we never saw you." That caught me off guard. She set down her spoon. "And I don't blame you. But revenge rarely leaves room for anything else." I said nothing. Later, I found myself alone with Adrian in the garden. He was leaning against the stone arch, watching the sky turn lavender. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking." "Dangerous." I glanced at him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we met under normal circumstances? Would you have spoken to me?" "Probably not." He smiled. "Then I suppose I should be grateful for the deception." I studied his face. There was something open there, unguarded. It scared me more than anything Lily had ever said. He took a step closer. "You're not the girl who left. And you're not the woman they remember. So who are you now?" "I'm still deciding." We were inches apart. Too close. Too real. I stepped back. "The engagement ends in 3 weeks. That was the agreement." He nodded, slowly. "And when it ends, will you miss it?" I didn't answer. Because yes. I would. The next morning, Lily sent an invitation to a private luncheon. Just the two of us. I almost declined. But something in me wanted to know what card she thought she still had to play. We met at the lakeside terrace, where we used to feed ducks as girls. The table was set perfectly. She poured the tea herself. "I've been thinking," she began, "about how quickly things change." "So have I." She ignored the jab. "You've become quite the success, Claire." "Truly. It's admirable." "Thank you. But don't you ever get tired of pretending?" I blinked. "Pretending what?" "That this is who you are. That Adrian loves you. That you belong in this world." She stirred her tea delicately. "We both know you're still the girl who used to cry when boys ignored her." I smiled slowly. "And you're still the girl who needed them to feel seen." Her hand froze. I continued, "But I learned how to survive without needing anyone." "You? You're still chasing approval like it's oxygen." She stood abruptly. "This isn't you." "It is now." She looked at me like she didn't recognize what she saw. Which meant I'd finally done it. But that didn't mean the game was over. Because Adrian had stopped pretending too. And that scared me more than Lily ever could. A week before the engagement was scheduled to end, I received a letter. Handwritten, sealed with an unfamiliar crest. It was from Adrian's mother. A formal invitation to dinner. Just the three of us. My pulse quickened as I read her elegant, precise script. Adrian had mentioned her only in passing, sharp, cold, calculating. The kind of woman who saw through masks and measured people like assets. He found me on the veranda later that day, eyes amused. "I see you've met my mother." In ink. "You didn't think to warn me?" She requested it herself. She rarely asks for anything. I don't suppose pretending to be engaged to her son is something she'll take lightly. "She won't care about the lie," he said. "She'll care if you're clever enough to pull it off." I stared at him. "You told her?" He shrugged. "She always knew." That night, I wore navy silk and a single sapphire ring. Understated, controlled. I met his mother's gaze across the dinner table and saw a flicker of recognition. Not of my name. But of my intention. She didn't ask about the wedding. She asked about business, trade, politics. I answered without flinching. "You're the first woman Adrian's brought home who doesn't ask about his trust fund," she said mid-meal. "I have one of my own," I replied. Her smile was thin. Almost impressed. After she left the room, Adrian poured us each a glass of wine. "You passed." "I wasn't auditioning." "You always are. Everyone is. You just did it better than anyone she's ever seen." I didn't say thank you. I didn't need to. As the week dwindled, the end loomed. The plan had always been clear. I would disappear, richer in reputation and sharper in spine. Adrian would return to being society's most eligible bachelor, free of the clingy heiress who'd been hounding him before me. But neither of us had predicted what pretending would unlock. We weren't acting anymore. The lines had blurred. And Lily noticed. She invited us to a charity event. One of those glitzy affairs filled with pastel gowns and overpoured champagne. She wore red, the only woman bold enough to do so. She took Adrian's arm the moment we walked in. "I've always wanted to pick your brain," she said sweetly. "Claire says you're brilliant." Adrian smiled. "She's not wrong." They drifted into conversation, too close, too smooth. I stood back, watching, testing myself. The old Claire would have panicked. This Claire waited. Let it happen. Later, she pulled me aside in the hallway, her eyes glittering. "He doesn't love you," she said, too quickly. "Did he tell you that?" "He didn't have to." I tilted my head. "And if he did? Would it matter? Or do you just hate that he might?" Her jaw clenched. "You think you've won. But you don't belong in his world." "Then it's a good thing I made it mine," I said. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. And maybe she was. The next morning, Adrian knocked on my study door. "Let's cancel the end date." I looked up from my papers. "Excuse me? This arrangement. This act. Let's drop the deadline. Let it breathe." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice flat. "Why?" "Because you're the first person who ever looked at me like a man, not a name. Because I like the way your mind works. And because I'm tired of pretending we don't fit." I stood, walked over, measured the truth in his eyes. "And if I say it was always supposed to be a game?" I asked. He stepped closer. "Then I'll play it for the rest of my life." My fingers curled into his lapel. And that's when Lily burst in. She froze at the sight of us, his hand on my waist, my eyes locked with his. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't look away when I said, I forgot to mention. The engagement's been extended. Adrian didn't flinch. He tightened his grip slightly, as if to confirm it. Lily blinked. You can't be serious. Deadly, I said. She turned on her heel and left. Fast. Almost trembling. I waited until her footsteps faded before I exhaled. Adrian raised a brow. That felt like checkmate. Not yet, I said. But we're close. He grinned. Do I get a crown when it's over? You get something better. And what's that? I leaned up, kissed him lightly. Me. It was supposed to be fiction. It was never meant to be real. But somewhere between the first lie and the final party, it became something neither of us could undo. And I didn't want to. The days after Lily stormed out were oddly quiet. She didn't send a message. Didn't show up at events. Not even a single petty remark from mother at brunch. It was as if the entire household braced itself, waiting for the storm they knew she was about to bring. Adrian remained steady. Unbothered. If anything, he seemed more amused by the drama, watching it all unfold like a strategist on the final stage of a chessboard. But I knew better than to relax. Lily didn't lose quietly. She plotted. Sure enough, it came in the form of a letter. Thick ivory stationery. My name written in her perfect script. She'd invited me to tea, alone. The note was polite, almost apologetic, which meant she was either desperate or dangerous. Or both. I arrived at the family estate that afternoon, greeted by a tense silence. Lily waited in the sunroom, surrounded by hydrangeas. She poured 2 cups of tea as if nothing had ever passed between us. You look different, she said finally. I am, I said, settling into the chair across from her. I've been thinking about us. About everything. I didn't respond. Let her fill the silence. She sighed. I was cruel. I didn't mean to be, not at first. But when everyone started comparing us, I felt like I had to win. There was no competition, I said quietly. You'd already won. Every time. She looked down at her tea. And still, I hated the way you watched. Like you were just waiting for it to fall apart. I wasn't waiting for anything, I said. I just didn't have the luxury of playing your games. I envied you, you know. The way you disappeared. How you came back with power, with purpose. I can barely keep a man's attention at dinner. That's because you think attention is love, I said. It's not. She blinked fast, eyes glistening. I want to fix things, she said. I want to be your sister again. I studied her. I wanted to believe her. A small part of me still remembered braiding her hair by candlelight, whispering stories after dark. But the smarter part, the part that had rebuilt itself out of ashes, knew better. I don't want revenge anymore, I said. But I don't need forgiveness either. She looked like she might cry. But she didn't. She just nodded. When I stood to leave, she didn't stop me. Outside, Adrian was waiting in the carriage. He didn't ask what was said. He just reached for my hand. Back at our rented manor, the staff greeted us with knowing looks. The engagement that had once been performance now felt like truth. It showed in the way we moved, easier, more aligned. At dinner that night, Adrian passed me a letter. It was an invitation from the Royal Committee. They wanted me to consult on an economic advisory board. The kind of thing women in our circle rarely touched. He looked proud. You built this, he said. Without a title. Without a husband. I had a name, I said. And you made it mean something. That night, I lay awake beside him. Not because I doubted the future, but because I saw it unfolding. My plan had worked. I'd become everything Lily never thought I could be. Respected. Powerful. Chosen. But the real surprise wasn't that I had defeated her. It was that I had outgrown her. The next week, we attended the governor's ball. Everyone who once overlooked me was there. They spoke my name with awe, asked my opinion, introduced their daughters to me like I was royalty. Adrian stayed close but never possessive. He knew I didn't need guarding. I was the storm now. Midway through the night, Lily appeared. Dressed in ivory this time. Subtle. Pale. Like she wanted to disappear. She approached me with a hesitant grace and curtsied, just enough to draw attention. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly. For giving me a chance to see myself. I nodded. I hope you use it. Then she was gone, slipping into the crowd like a ghost. As the music swelled, Adrian turned to me. Are you ready for the next game? I thought this one wasn't over yet. It is, he said. You just won. We danced without speaking. My gown whispered against the marble. His breath was steady on my cheek. And for the first time I realized I wasn't pretending. Not to be in love. Not to belong. Not to be the woman everyone finally saw. I was her. The forgotten girl had become unforgettable. 3 months later, the wedding invitations went out. Real this time. Engraved on thick paper with our initials entwined in gold. The same society that once saw me as Lily's plain little sister now scrambled to secure a seat. Headlines called it the match of the year. They speculated on the gown, the guest list, the honeymoon. They tried to guess how a woman with no noble title could have landed Adrian Vale. They didn't realize I never needed a title. Just timing. And strategy. Lily RSVP'd yes. She arrived in a simple blush gown that whispered elegance instead of shouting envy. I saw her standing at the edge of the room during the rehearsal dinner, sipping wine and scanning the crowd like a politician. She caught my eye and nodded. It was the closest we'd come to peace. Adrian noticed. She's not your villain anymore. She never was, I said. Just a mirror. He raised a brow. Do I want to ask what that makes me? I smirked. The exception. He leaned in, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Not a pawn? Never, I whispered. That was me. The ceremony was held in the same chapel where Lily once said she'd marry. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I walked down the aisle alone. I wanted every guest to see what I had become without anyone's help. My dress shimmered in the late morning sun, soft, unassuming, until the light hit it just right. Then it commanded attention. Adrian waited at the altar, jaw tight, hand steady. His vows were simple, but when he looked at me, it felt like he meant every word. When it was my turn, I looked out across the rows of people. So many familiar faces. So many who once ignored mine. I used to think being chosen meant I was worthy, I said. But now I know, choosing myself first is what made me ready for this. There was a beat of silence. Then the applause began. Lily didn't cry. She smiled. And for the first time in our lives, it felt genuine. At the reception, as laughter echoed and champagne flowed, I found myself alone with her again. On the balcony, overlooking the garden we used to run through barefoot as girls. She didn't turn when I stepped up beside her. I used to hate this view, she said. Because it reminded me how small we were. And now? She smiled. Now it just looks peaceful. We stood there for a long moment. You're not who I thought you'd be, she admitted. I'm not, I said. But neither are you. She looked at me. Do you forgive me? I didn't answer right away. I understand you, I said finally. That's enough for now. She nodded. Fair. Back inside, Adrian was waiting with a glass of wine and a smirk. Should I be worried you two are finally getting along? No, I said. Worried would be if we teamed up. He laughed. Terrifying. That night, I stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching the chandeliers catch light like stars. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who stood in corners, clutched her glass too tightly, smiled politely while everyone looked through her. She was gone now. In her place stood a woman who had rewritten the story. Who had turned rejection into armor, invisibility into power. A woman who didn't need to be chosen. Because she had chosen herself, every step of the way. And love? Love had found her there. Not as a prize. But as a witness. Because the most powerful revenge is never about making them regret losing you. It's making them realize you were never theirs to begin with. The honeymoon wasn't a retreat, it was a reset. Adrian and I left the noise behind and slipped into a quiet villa tucked high in the hills of Santorini, with whitewashed walls and blue domes that seemed to touch the sky. No reporters. No curious guests. Just the sea, the silence, and him. He cooked. I read. We argued over music and books, and laughed more than I expected. Somewhere between the market strolls and wine-soaked evenings, we stopped performing. We'd spent so long faking a relationship that when it became real, we didn't know how to name it. But it was there, in the easy comfort of shared space. In the way his hand found mine without thinking. In the way he didn't flinch when I woke up from an old memory I didn't want anymore. One morning, over coffee, he looked up from his journal and asked, "What would you have done if I'd said no? To the fake engagement?" He nodded. "I would have found someone else," I said honestly. The plan didn't need your face. It just needed your name. He smiled like that amused him. And now? Now it needs neither. He leaned across the table, kissed me like we weren't teasing anymore. Still dangerous, he murmured. Always. When we returned home, the world had changed around us. The people who once brushed me off now sought my opinion on policy, on commerce, on culture. My name was whispered in rooms that used to lock me out. Not because I was Adrian's wife, but because I had built something impossible to ignore. Even Lily had changed. She wasn't sweet or bitter. She was simply quieter. Thoughtful. She'd begun mentoring girls from the countryside, organizing social salons that taught them to speak, to lead, to question. She sent me clippings from the papers when one of them made headlines. I sent her flowers when they got accepted into university. We weren't close. But we were no longer at war. Mother adjusted slowly. She still stumbled over my new name, still mentioned Lily first at family dinners. But she started asking about my travels. My work. Once, she even said she was proud of me. It sounded foreign on her tongue, but I let it stay. Father remained distant. That never changed. Adrian and I built more than a marriage. We built a legacy. Not an empire of land or armies, but of influence. We created scholarship funds. Opened a foundation. Every time someone doubted my place at the table, I pulled out a chair. Years passed. I watched young girls enter the world with fire in their eyes and steel in their voices. And I wondered if I had something to do with that. I hoped so. One afternoon, Lily came to visit. She brought a girl named Emma, 18, nervous, brilliant. She reminds me of you, Lily said after tea. Then she's dangerous, I replied. She wants to work in trade policy. But she doesn't know where to start. Send her to me, I said. I'll open a door. As they left, Lily paused in the doorway. You could have destroyed me, she said. I know. Why didn't you? I looked at her for a long moment. Because you weren't the one who erased me. I did that. Trying to be loved in ways that were too small for me. She nodded slowly. Then she was gone. That night, Adrian found me in the garden, hands in the soil, planting late-season tulips. You're not finished, are you? He asked. With the garden? With the world. I smiled. Not even close. He sank onto the grass beside me, loosened his tie, and helped bury a bulb. Good. The stars blinked above us like old friends. The kind who knew everything, but never told. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. Not to Lily. Not to them. Not even to myself. Because the girl who was passed over had become the woman people looked up to. The shadow had stepped into the light. Not to be seen. But to lead. And the world had finally learned what I always knew, the forgotten ones remember everything.